everybody, welcome to my 28 days later special. It's hard to believe it's been 28 days that we've been locked down, at least where I am. I asked for your questions and boy did I get a lot of questions. I'm gonna see if I can get to at least a good chunk of those, but I wanna start with the questions people asked over on Patreon. Do you have any experience buying lumber or sheet goods online? No, I've never bought any lumber online. We've got plenty of places nearby where I can get it, but I've really heard nothing but good from people who buy lumber online, because usually they don't want you to have to return anything, so they're gonna pick out the really good pieces for you. That's what I've heard. How does your wife deal with being married to a YouTube superstar? Well, I would hardly consider myself a YouTube superstar, but I don't know, we've been married forever, so I don't think she really thinks anything of it. I finished all of the projects in the first course with Helmsman Spar urethane. I love the finish on pine, but I don't love the havoc it renders on my beautiful paintbrushes. Always take good care of your brushes and clean them out really well in mineral spirits. If you can still get mineral spirits. Here in California, you can't get it anymore, so I'm not sure. They've got some other paint thinner I haven't tried yet. I still have some mineral spirits, but I clean out my brush using kind of the Bob Ross technique. So I clean it out really well in a little bit of mineral spirits, and then I beat the devil out of it, and then do it some more. Do that 3 times in mineral spirits. Oh, and after that, wash it out with soap and water. Also, how do you clean them in mid-coat so they don't get gunked up? That's an interesting question, because they can, especially in the ferrule end of the brush up by where that metal piece is. There's no reason why you can't rinse out your brush in paint thinner or mineral spirits while you're applying coats. Just keep a separate container of mineral spirits and then just rinse out your brush every now and again. Beat the devil out of it and then go back to applying your finish. Should be all right. That little bit of thinner that's left in your brush shouldn't affect the finish really that much. Bob wants to know, do I tape up the areas for gluing if I use water-based stain and finish on the separate pieces? Yeah, if you're gonna stain or pre-finish or pre-stain a piece before assembling it, I would definitely try to keep that finish off of those areas that the glue is gonna stick to. Hey Steve, I made the Harmony garden bench, thank you, and sanded it a bunch. I still have glue discoloration. Do I keep on sanding? How do I ensure I have enough glue to keep this from happening on nicer projects? Well, yeah, you should be getting a little bit of squeeze out when you clamp projects together, but not so much that it's just dripping all over the place. So if you get a little bit of squeeze out, that's good. Try to wipe it off right away. You can use a damp rag, that might help too, to get it off of there. But once it's dry and you need to get it off of there, if it's a big amount, you can chisel it off and then sand it down. But if it's still not coming off, it probably means you just need to sand it more. I think that's about the only solution you're gonna find. But put a little paint thinner on there before you apply a finish and you'll be able to see if it's still kind of on there. Okay, let me move over to the YouTube questions now. Wow, there's a lot of them. There's just over 700. Obviously, I can't get to all of those. So what I'm gonna do is just sort these by the top comments. Those are the ones that have the most upvotes. I'll start with those, go down the list, and then see how far I can get. And obviously, if I have kind of repeat questions occurring, I should have already answered those. How often do strangers ask you to go on a selfie? How often are you recognized in public? How do you behave when people meet you? Well, yeah, it happens occasionally. It happens actually more outside of California than it does here. For some reason, there's not a lot of woodworkers near where I live, but people are always really nice, and usually they just want to come up and say hi. I don't get a whole lot of people wanting to take a selfie with me. Sometimes that happens, but you know, I think it's flattering. I don't like to call people who watch the show fans. I would prefer to just call them friends. What was your job before you started this channel? What got you started on YouTube? Well, that's sort of a long story, but I was a graphic designer before I started YouTube, and I was doing graphic design and YouTube kind of started at the same time, and I was doing both for a while, but then YouTube became more and more of my life, and so then that just became my full-time job. What accidents have I had in the shop, and then what do I do to prevent them in the future? That's funny, because I get asked that question pretty frequently. I guess I don't want to say I'm lucky that I haven't had any major accidents in the shop, because I'm very careful. But I haven't had anything. Probably the most major accidents I've had have been from my sander, my sanding disc, where I get my knuckles too close to it and it'll scrape my knuckles, or just kind of dumb things like dropping something on my foot or a piece of board falls. But as far as the power tools go, I'm always super, super cautious around those. I approach every cut on the table saw like it's the only cut I'm ever gonna make. And I also, the one bit of advice I wanna give everybody is no matter what tool you're using, do an imaginary dry run of whatever cut or procedure you're going to do before you actually do it. And in that imaginary dry run, imagine where your hands are going to be positioned throughout the entire cut and how your body is going to be positioned, and you should be much safer that way. Two questions been wondering for a while: what does Mrs. Ramsey do for a job and with her free time? How is Wyatt enjoying college? Wyatt has graduated from college and he's back at home now. He had a job working at a publishing company, but then got laid off when the world fell apart. Wyatt's spending his free time writing a lot. He writes D&D campaigns and adventures, and they're really quite amazing. And he plays D&D online now. Mrs. Ramsey is a property manager for a whole bunch of Bank of America branches, and so she works from home too. Her free time she spends mostly knitting and crocheting. This is a good question. Do I have any project videos that never got released because the project didn't work out, I hated it, or maybe I just didn't like how I filmed it? I kind of think that happened, but I can't remember what that was on. For the most part, if I'm gonna start a project, I've pretty much got it all planned out in my head ahead of time, so I know I should mostly know how it's going to work out. But I think some of my earlier videos, I might have had some of those that didn't. There was a couple projects that just didn't work out, but I still published the video because sometimes people like to see me screw up. Show your tattoo, Steve. Well, I've got pants on, so I can't lift my leg up really right now, but I'll show you a picture of it. I designed this tattoo myself. It's a highly stylized 26.2. It represents 26.2 miles, and it commemorates completing my first marathon. Next question was from New Zealand, and it received a lot of comments from people saying, hi, I'm from New Zealand too. So Heather, thank you for your question. And she said she's a neat freak in most aspects of her life, but she finds it really hard to throw away scraps, and what are my criteria for keeping scrap wood? This is a huge problem for all woodworkers, because every time we're left with a little piece of wood, we think maybe we could do something with that someday. But those some days never seem to come. And I wish I had like a hard and fast rule, but I know that over the past 10 years, I've gotten much better at knowing what I'm not going to use or what I'm more likely to use. In general, if a piece is like this smallish or smaller, I toss it out because it's probably not going to be enough to really make a project. And if I wanted to use it as part of a project, I would probably need a matching piece, and I would never be able to probably match it exactly. The other thing I like to do is once a year, I go through all of my lumber and I just toss out the wood that I haven't used. You'll know if a board has been sitting there for a long time and it's just not going to get used. And at that point, what I do is I just get a big pile, I set it on the curb and just post an ad on Craigslist for free lumber, and it's usually gone in like an hour. The other thing I like to try to do is keep my wood storage at a minimum, so I just don't have anywhere to put extra lumber. I made my lumber racks on the wall here for my weekend workshop course, but I made those extra narrow just because I didn't want it to be filled with lots and lots of lumber. I guess it's just one of those things we all kind of have to work out our own system, but yeah, it's something we all struggle with. You recently edited a video that you posted 7 years ago. You've spoken before about the changes you've made because of health issues you've had. How does it feel to watch those older videos of the old you? I hate watching those old videos, I really do. But I think that's true with most people. YouTube is a weird thing because if you're posting videos on YouTube for any length of time, you kind of have this permanent record of your life that most people really don't have. So it's really easy for me to go back and look at a video I made 11 years ago, and it makes me cringe. But yeah, I've made huge changes in my life that I'm super proud of. I'm 53 now, and I'm stronger and healthier than I've ever been in my life. But I suppose in 10 years, I'll look back at me now and also cringe. And this one was bound to come up. Question, explain coordinated lingerie. Oh man. You know, as soon as I had that box that was in my closet and I shot the video, that box has been there forever. I didn't even think about that. And then I was editing the video and I saw that and I go, you know, that's gonna be the topic of conversation. Everybody's gonna wanna know about that box, but I thought, I really don't want to go and turn the box and reshoot the whole thing. The story behind that box really isn't that exciting. It's just, it was a box that's repurposed now. It actually holds our wedding album is in that box and stored away up there. I don't know where we got the box. We've probably had it for well over 30 years. See, reality is never as exciting as your imagination. Have you ever used fancy joinery like mortise and tenon or dovetails? What's your favorite horror director? Oh, there's a good question. Well, let's see. Mortise and tenon dovetails. dovetails. Yeah, I've made all of those before. I've even tried hand cutting dovetails once, and I didn't really enjoy the experience. It's just not for me. And I had a dovetail jig for my router, and I used to use that, but also it just seemed like every time I wanted to use it, I had to kind of relearn it, and it was just a pain. And then I at some point realized that I don't really have to use those to complete a project. That's more about the process, and if that's, you know, what you enjoy doing and exploring all those different joints, then that's great. But for me, I just kind of realized, well, I'd rather have the completed project and using simpler joints that are just as strong. Mostly, you probably already know, my favorite joints to use are really rabbets and dado joints. I just think they're the easiest, quickest joints to make, and they're super strong. And of course, I love using pocket hole joinery, but only for specific uses, or if I just want to make certain people cranky. Ah, here's one from Words and Wood. Hey Art, he's talking about my April Fool's collab I did with Matthias Wandel years ago. It was one of his favorite novelty type videos that I did. Yeah, that was a blast. And it was an April Fool's where we filmed our parts separately, and we were making just a little six-sided die. Obviously, his version was just this overly complicated way of making it, and my version was just the simple way. It was a lot of fun. Matthias Wandel is one of my favorite people on YouTube. And he also wants to know did I get a copyright strike against my time warp dance video it was a Halloween video I did a long time ago. Yeah, I got a copyright on that. It's not a strike, it's they just take over the monetization of it. And so whoever owns a BMI probably, or Time Warner, I don't know. But I decided to leave that one there because the song itself was so important to the video. It's not like I could replace that song for that video. So I just left it there. It was one of my first zombie videos. Oh, I also wanted to get back to this question from Harlan. He had a two-part question where he asked about my favorite horror movie director. Well, I've got a lot. Right now, I am totally into Joe Begos, and he's made 3 films. I've seen his most recent 2 films that they just blow me away. Bliss and VFW. He shot Bliss on 16mm film. It's this super indie, trippy film. Splattercore, I guess. It is just so frenetic and so much energy and blood, and I just love it. Oh, and VFW too is just such a badass movie. Man, I love that movie. He's one of my favorites right now, and I love Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. He also has a really unique vision. Ari Aster, who did Hereditary, Midsommar. There's so many, and going back a ways, you know, I would count David Cronenberg as one of my favorite directors because I'm really into like body horror is one of my favorite subgenres. I know there's a ton more that I'm forgetting, but those are some of them. Whatever happened to Home and Garden for Mere Mortals? And what's the tape on the garage floor? Well, the tape on the garage floor, that's a common question. I get that all the time. And the blue tape is just, those are spikes, they're called, and it's just for me. So since I'm a one-man show, I don't have a camera operator or anything. I have to focus. So usually, like, well, if I'm standing here, I focus by reaching over, just doing the autofocus and then locking it in place. But sometimes if I'm like further back here, what I'll do is I'll set up like anything, like a 2x4 or a broom or something, and I'll just prop it up here so I have something to focus on. And then I can mark that spot with tape so I know when I go back to it that I'll be in focus. So that's all those are, is focus marks, and I've got them all over the place. I probably should scrape those off. Oh, and what happened to HGMM? Home and Garden for Mere Mortals is something I really wanted to do, but it just didn't pan out, and it was costing me more to kind of produce those and to get people involved in it than it was worth the effort. So I had to stop doing that. It's also a good example of one of those things that when you run a business, it's always good to keep trying new things, and it's also good to know when to bail out of something when you find out it's not such a good thing, rather than just keep grinding at it when it's not making you any money. There's a good quote from somebody, I don't know who said it, that a lot of running a business is knowing the difference between an opportunity and a distraction. I just filled up that memory card and had to go edit that first part of the video. It looks like we're sitting at around 14.5 minutes here. Hope you guys aren't getting bored, but what else you got to do, right? Actually, that's a tip I have. If any of you are making videos, try to edit as you're going. It really helps the process along, and it gives you a break in between building things to edit. And I actually enjoy editing a lot. I'm really fast at it. Okay, let's get back to the questions. What's the story behind the iconic micro jig intro on all the old videos? How did it come to be? It became, Microjig was one of my first sponsors on Woodworking for Mere Mortals, and they asked me if they could put that little blurb, Microjig, maker of the gripper, at the beginning of every video. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But I realized really soon after doing that, that people would start to get really annoyed by seeing that every time. So then I started to just add a little intro to it, and it kind of evolved into me. At first I was just doing me in different places saying this video is sponsored by, and then it went Microjig, and then I started just weird things where the Microjig spot would interrupt what I was saying. And people really started to respond to that. Microjig loved it, and I loved working with Microjig. And by the way, Microjig didn't stop working with me. I stopped working with them on those. I mean, I still have a good relationship with Microjig, but I just stopped all sponsored ads on my videos, at least for now. It just didn't feel right to do those sponsored spots when I'm also trying to sell my own products, the courses. But I mean, it was a great position to be in where people actually looked forward to seeing an ad. But another thing about Microjig is that is really a good product. I use those grippers all the time, and I feel uncomfortable using my table saw without them. Do I have a regular job besides YouTube superstar? Every YouTuber is asked that if they have a regular job. Nope, this is it. Can you tell us about the dust mask you're wearing? Sure. This is actually an N99 filter dust mask, so it's far better than the N95s that you hear about these days. I don't remember who makes this. I got it on Amazon, and it comes with these, you know, reusable filters that you stick in there. So I don't know, it seems to do a good job. Just look on Amazon for N99, well, you can't get any of them now, but that's what it is. Let's see, John says he has an original Craftsman 10-inch table saw from the 90s. He's not thrilled with the aluminum table or the sloppy fence. Yeah, that's the problem with the lower end table saws. Usually will cut wood fine, but they usually skimp on the rip fence is really where I notice it the most, a really, really crappy rip fence. And that's super important to have a good rip fence. And then, yeah, that aluminum table is kind of wonky too. I had one of those saws too. I used on this show for a long time. It was a little, well, it wasn't Craftsman, it was a little Skill saw, but it was the exact same saw. And, you know, I made jigs for it, sleds and stuff, and it worked for me because I kind of was able to tweak it to work. So it's just one of those things is, do you want to invest the time? I would recommend upgrading your saw, like a rigid contractor saw. You could get one for $500 probably, and it's a really good saw. Also look into buying an aftermarket rip fence. You know, you can buy those separately. It just depends upon if you can get one that will fit, because I know that those Craftsman saws are pretty small. To me, there's this sort of sweet spot among table saws. There's the really low end ones that are really nothing more than an upside down circular saw, and I don't recommend those. And at the same time, I don't recommend these $1,000 and above saws unless you got a lot of money to spend. But you can spend $500 to $600 on a table saw and get a pretty good saw. Another question asking me what's my regular job? Yeah, this is it. Probably the biggest source of confusion there is people who think that woodworking is my full-time job, and it's really not. Making videos is my job. But really over the past 4 or 5 years, I'd rather consider myself a teacher more than anything. Oh, I see. Now we're getting into these questions. Do I prefer small or large curd cottage cheese? Probably large, but I don't eat a lot of cottage cheese. Who's my favorite woodworker on YouTube? I don't know, that one always gets me in trouble, but I would say I always enjoy, like I mentioned, Matthias Wandel a lot. I like John Heiss from ibuildit.ca. Every time I see CA, I think it means California, but it's Canada. But oh my gosh, there are hundreds of woodworking YouTube channels now. It's really hard for me to keep up with them. What are the best projects to do with miscellaneous scraps of wood? Make a small box. Can you teach us how to plane wood by hand? Not really. I have a couple planes and I've used them, but it's not really, there's plenty of people who do a better job at that than me. It's not my thing. I know your channel is about the everyday woodworker, but how have you resisted getting all the new state-of-the-art tools that I'm sure you've been offered? It seems like it would be a natural direction to move in. Yeah. You answered it. I want to keep to the mission of this channel. And yeah, I mean, I think having a CNC machine, for instance, would be a lot of fun for me, but I don't think I'm the right person to teach it to other people. there's plenty of other guys doing that. And really the whole core essence of this channel is to show people that you can build projects without having to spend a lot of money on tools. So yeah, I've had lots and lots of offers for people wanting to send me all different types of tools, and I almost always turn them down. Except for Microjig, maker of the gripper. I see this channel as like an entry point to woodworking, and I know a lot of people outgrow this channel and they don't watch it as much because they've moved on to more advanced level stuff, but I think that there's a real need for what I'm doing here, so I'm gonna keep doing it as long as I can. Have you ever tried selling your projects, and how was it? Yeah, I've sold a few projects, but it was not worth the hassle and the time and effort. You don't make a lot of money doing that unless you can batch produce a lot of projects, you know, for craft fairs and those sort of things. One of the things I really enjoyed doing when I was making a lot more projects on this channel was auctioning those off and raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I found that really satisfying, and people were much more willing to pay more for those projects, knowing that all of those proceeds were just going to go to charity. What was the point, effect, spark when you felt, I'll make woodworking videos on YouTube? I didn't think it through at all. I didn't even think through the name of the channel at that point. It was just Steve in Marin, actually Stev in Marin, because I forgot how to spell my name. I was building a chessboard and I just thought it would be fun to document it, and I did. At that point, there was like 3 of us on YouTube making woodworking videos. How do you always come up with the projects to do? That's a question I get asked a lot. Was there ever a time when you just couldn't figure out what to make next? No, I always have lots and lots of ideas of things I want to make and things in mind. That's actually similar to another question I get sometimes is, do I ever think I'm just going to run out of ideas? And I've mentioned this before, but that's not how ideas work. You don't have like a limited supply that you're born with and then you're slowly using them up, and then at one point it's like, that's all I got, there's no more. That's not the way your human brains work. I have a small shop in my garage, just got a miter saw, and I was wondering where I can get plans for the miter saw station. The miter saw station is part of my weekend workshop course, which, by the way, reopens on Wednesday, and it'll be open permanently, by the way. So if you sign up, you know, you can sign up anytime for it, and you get all this access to everything right away, and it'll last forever. You get lifetime access. I think it's my best course. It's only 97 bucks. Can't go wrong. What's something you wish somebody had told you when you were younger? Not necessarily about woodworking. Well, that's one of those things where people do tell you things when you're younger, but when you're younger, you're like, I don't care about that, I'm young. But if I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self something, I would say, start eating right and start exercising regularly. Those are, I think, the 2 most important things you can do when you're young. Stop with the Doritos and beer. Does the pentagram and skull with dripping blood hold any significant meaning for you? Oh man, I get that question a lot. No, it was last year's Halloween project. The year before, I made a Ouija board. That was really triggering to a lot of people, but it's not on display out here. I am like so totally not a superstitious person. I think it's a cool image, and I like any kind of horror themed stuff. Do you strictly adhere to the golden ratio for your furniture projects? No, I do kind of take that into consideration though, and it's kind of interesting because on SketchUp, when you lay out rectangles, one of the like snap to points is the golden ratio. I think over time you just sort of develop an eye for proportions and what looks about right, and mostly we know if something is just off. We can all register that. Hey Tyler, Steve, I just want to know that your channel has inspired me to start woodworking myself. Thanks. That's like, I love hearing those comments. That is like the best comment that I receive on my channel, is when somebody decides to start woodworking because of something I did. I'd like to challenge you to make a project in centimeters for comical effect and for the rest of the world. Well, for all of my projects, I've been doing this for a while, for all of my projects, whenever I mention a dimension that's critical, I always have that in metric too. And of course, all of my plans are in metric and US measurements. If we watch Steve Ramsey, who does Steve Ramsey watch? Watchman styled question. I watch a lot of video essay channels. Now that your shop is more minimalistic, do you find you're more productive now? Yes, I absolutely do. When I have gotten rid of all of the junk that I don't need in my environment, and I know where things are, and I have a clean workspace, it's so much nicer to work. I struggle with how to determine the thickness needed for the strength or support when pieces are needed. When to use 3/4 versus 1/2 inch sort of guidelines. I'm not really sure what those guidelines are. I'm sure somebody does the math. There's a lot of people who are really hung up on those kind of numbers, but remember, especially when you're using solid lumber, the direction of the board is also just as important, if not more important. So like, you know, a flat board running this way is not going to be as strong as if you tip it up this way and you have a lot of weight down it. So for instance, these 3 cabinets that I'm making for the closet organizer, all 3 of those are going to be fairly heavy, but I've only got those sitting on 3/4 inch plywood boards on their edges, and it's just going to be plenty. I wish I had a better answer than that, but I've also discovered that wood is a lot stronger than you might think. Nosferatu46, it's a great username. What's your favorite horror movie? Mine is The Loved Ones. Yes, I like The Loved Ones a lot. I think that's an Australian film. I saw it a couple of years ago. That one is really twisted about a girl and her father who kidnap like a prom date. But I actually have a list on IMDb where I have all kinds of lists, and this one of them is just my favorite horror films ever. If I had to pick one, I would say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably my favorite horror film of all time, but other ones that I enjoy equally would be The Witch, Dawn of the Dead, both the remake and the original, a Spanish movie, Wreck, really scary. Oh, and a recent Spanish language film that is really good is Tigers Are Not Afraid. Check that one out too. Oh, Paranormal Activity, I love that. And all of the Saw movies. Have you been in contact with Lainey Shaughnessy? I wonder what happened to him. That's a good question, I don't know. I miss seeing Lainey. Lainey used to post videos, and he was the one who organized buying me that new table saw. He got all of the people together who were on that plaque there, and they all donated money to buy me that saw so I could get rid of that little old skill saw that I used years ago. Do I like tacos? Love tacos. What's my favorite meal? Don't know. I like all food. I really like Thai food and Indian food. What made me get into the beginner style videos rather than more extravagant woodworking projects? Mostly because there was a need for it. Why would I ask a question? You didn't bother to answer my last question. Okay, Brian. If you weren't a YouTuber, what do you think you'd be doing right now? I don't know. Will you continue with this video format after everything is over with? You mean the daily vlog series? Probably not. I just don't know how long this is all gonna last. I hope I'm not gonna be back here doing a 28 weeks later episode. And I'm back again. You know, one of the things I could have done is a live stream of this, but there's a couple of things. I don't think that live streams are always that interesting when they're in this sort of a format, unless I was answering your direct questions, but even those kind of get tedious after a while. And secondly, there would just be no replayability to the live stream. Usually people don't want to watch it after it's happened. So hopefully I can edit this one down and have it a little bit more speedy. And plus you got to figure the first 5 minutes of every live stream is, okay, am I alive here? Is anybody watching? Hello? Hello? Oh, here's somebody asking me about my haircut. Well, when you had your current haircut, were you going for the futuristic look of Gary Oldman's character in The Fifth Element? Hadn't thought about that, but I remember that movie. It had Mila Jovovich in it, who was just gorgeous. That's what I remember from that movie. But I don't know, my hairstylist came up with this, not this now, because now it's too long. I get a haircut every 3 or 4 weeks, and now I can't, and so I don't know what to do with it now. It's just driving me crazy. Plus, she colors my hair, and she does a great job of coloring it, so now it's just gonna go all gray again. So I really want to get involved in woodworking and thought being stuck at home is a good chance to start, but I'm not sure what I should start with. What would you recommend as a good starter project to get my feet wet? I always recommend the BMW. I've got free plans for that over at basicmobileworkbench.com. I can't believe how many people have made that workbench, and it's a great first project because then you actually have a workbench that you can use for other projects, and you'll learn a lot of skills along the way of building that. Kyle wants to know, I'd love to know how you decide when it's time to throw out a piece of sandpaper. Do you go by feel, by touch, by number of uses? I wish I had an answer to that because I'm horrible at keeping sandpaper. I keep it because I always think there's going to be some left of it, and so I made a drawer in my sandpaper caddy over here just to throw in those scraps that I know I'm going to kind of be afraid to throw away. It's a little easier to tell on my random orbit disc because I'll just use those things until I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's just paper there. There's no grit left. How do you feel about dados on a router table? I'm fairly new to woodworking and can't afford a table saw that does dados. Yeah, absolutely, use a router table. For me, I just find it's easier to use to make dados on a table saw, but I also recognize that people outside of the US may not be able to get a table saw that will accept a stack of dado blades. Whatever happened to the TARDIS you built a few years ago? Do you still have it? No, I don't. You know, I used it, I set it up a few times and I never used it again, and it was back in my storage shed back here, and then I finally got rid of it. What does your wife think about having a toolman Tim Taylor in her house, and does she use that to her advantage? Well, I can tell you that she's always filled with ideas of things that I can make. You've probably mentioned this before, but what software do you use for the planning process of your projects? Yeah, I get that question a lot. What design software to use? I use SketchUp. I use SketchUp Make 2017. That's the desktop version. I don't use it's a free version. You can still download that too, but I've tried using the online version and it's perfect, except I don't know, maybe you could do this now, I haven't checked in a while, but I like to be able to set the shortcut keys to my mouse. So I use the mouse side buttons and the scroll wheel so I can zoom, orbit, and pan. And I use those all in conjunction really fast. And without those, I'm kind of at a loss to have to use the keyboard. It's just a little quirky thing, but I would recommend using SketchUp free on the website. I don't see any reason to get the pro version of SketchUp. I think that's mainly if you're going to be, you know, building a house or something. Another question about my favorite horror movie. This guy likes Exorcist and Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is awesome. And The Exorcist was groundbreaking. Kyler has a problem with a jigsaw, trying to get a jigsaw to cut a straight line. Yeah, jigsaw isn't really great at cutting straight lines, but you can set up a board or something to use as a fence to run it along. And then if you're gonna do that, try to use like the widest blade that you can find. A little narrow blade will just have so much deflection, it can be difficult to get those straight. If you don't have a table saw, I would suggest at least getting a circular saw to help with those straight cuts instead of just the jigsaw. Of all of the things you've built over the years, does Mrs. Ramsey have a favorite? That's an interesting question. Let me go ask her. Her craft table, that fold down craft table, she uses it all the time. Hi Steve, question. How do I convince my wife to let me buy a table saw? I don't know, maybe work on your marriage. Steve, have you ever built a table and tied it all together with only the pieces? No screws, nails, or any metal, just wood and glue. Yeah, it's the way I make most of my tables and everything is just with glue. Beginner question, when and how should glue and screws be used together? I always think glue first. Glue is my primary way to join pieces together. A lot of times I use screws to just kind of speed up the process of having the glue dry so I don't have to clamp things together. I would like to know your wife's input on the time spent in the garage, the fact that you're taking up the entire garage, and other opinions your wife has about woodworking. It's never a conflict with us. She knows it's my job, and the garage, we probably wouldn't be using it for cars anyways because it's just doesn't make sense. We could just park them out there and we have this whole extra area. Probably this would just be used for storage and just junk. Are you generally proud of your projects when they're finished? I tend to feel a mixture of pride and disappointment about the small details I could have done better. Yeah, I understand that totally. I think we all do to some extent. I've never been completely satisfied with anything I've ever made. I'm okay with them, but I always know those little flaws in the project. I guess the trick is to just kind of get past that and know that it's only you seeing those flaws, nobody else sees them. And like I always mention, you can always turn the crappy side against the wall. How long have I been a woodworker? How long have I been doing it full time? I started woodworking when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And like I mentioned before, I can't ever say I've really been a full-time woodworker, but I started a YouTube channel back in 2008 and became full-time around 2010, 2011. Question, you have to make a project with one hand tool, one power tool, and one species of wood. What would you grab and what would you make? That's an interesting question. Power tool is easy, I would use a table saw. Hand tool, probably a mallet. I would use pine wood because I know I would screw it up and I don't want to spend a lot of money on wood. And what would I make? Resin River coffee table. Except I wouldn't use resin, and it wouldn't be a table. I'd probably make a small box. What did you do with your old shop furniture? By my observations, you should have 2 lumber carts now. Good observation. Our gardener who comes by every other week, he took 2 of my workbenches for his shop, and the extra lumber rack that I had, I broke it down and then used the wood for other projects. Question, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? I need to watch that movie again, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If I was ever asked what is my favorite comedy film of all time, that's the one. And it's been a while since I've seen it. I've probably seen it 20 times. When I do dovetails, they always look like Frankenstein's fingers and always so slack. Any tips or tricks on how to do them? Remember, Frankenstein was the creator, not the monster. I'm the worst person to ask about hand cutting dovetails. Like I mentioned, I've only done it once before and it was okay. But from everybody I know who hand cuts dovetails, it's just one of those things that takes practice. You just gotta keep working on it until you get the whole technique down. What type of paint did I use on the closet project, and what's my favorite type of paint that I would use? Latex house paint. I mean, it's strong enough and durable enough for all of the rain and storms and sunlight that it's perfectly fine indoors. When I'm not shooting videos, what kind of music do I listen to in the shop? I'm really into listening to podcasts. Most of those are movie related. And as far as music, I'm really into indie music, especially anything new I like to listen to. Some of my favorite performers that I'm really into right now, I'm looking at my Spotify list here, are Big Thief, The Beths, Always. I like Death Cab for Cutie a lot. Father John Misty. Frances Quinlan, she is a singer also from Hop Along. Really like the New Pornographers. Oh, and Sylvan Esso. Wyatt and I saw Sylvan Esso a couple years back, and they're like one of my favorite electronic duos. And I really like Billie Eilish a lot. I love that whole minimalist sound of hers. Why the Jumanji poster? That was just a giveaway. I saw the movie on the night it opened and they were giving away those posters. It's a fun movie, both of those Jumanji. I actually think the new Jumanji films are a lot more fun than the original. As I've only recently begun following your channel, thank you, Wayne. Are there any particular projects you recommend watching for someone who hasn't yet set up the shop? Again, I would say get the BMW, download my basic mobile workbench plans and build that. At least there you've got something that you can work on. And once you do that, build a basic box. I really think you can learn a lot by building a basic box. You'll find the video on my channel. What's a tip for a new YouTuber starting a DIY channel? It depends upon what your goals are. If you just want to do it for fun, just shoot whatever you enjoy making and show it to the world. If you're interested in attracting a lot of people to watch your channel, figure out what people want to see. I always think that the best videos are the videos that solve a problem. And this is kind of my approach to my courses too, where I don't want the courses to be just a bunch of plans and videos, that they all have a structure and a purpose, and again, they solve a problem, such as like the weekend workshop course solves the problem that so many of us have of having a small space and not knowing how to woodwork in that. Second thing I would suggest is don't get too hung up on the equipment that you use to shoot it. People are much more interested in what it is you're doing rather than fancy camera moves or special effects. Michael just started out in woodworking, and he's got a small brick shed. He wonders to know if 7 foot by 7 foot by 9 foot is too small. No, that's plenty big. You can do a lot of work in that. Shopsmith, thumbs up, thumbs down. He received a Mark V that needs some restoration. Tried to decide if it's worth it. I started woodworking on a Shopsmith Mark V when I was a kid. My dad got it because it's perfect for a small space. It's an all-in-one tool that converts from a table saw to drill press to all kinds of things you can do with it. It's good, but it's not so good for workflow all the time. In other words, if you wanted to cut a board on a table saw and then you need to take it over to a disc sander on a Shopsmith, you would have to convert those in between each time. But, you know, if you're a hobbyist, you don't have a lot of space and you got plenty of time, why not? There's a lot of people who are really into Shopsmith. It's like a whole little community of people who just love that tool. What's that clamp I use as a straight edge when I break down plywood? It's I forget what this is called, but I'm pretty sure it's from Peachtree Woodworking. And I think it works great. It's just got this sliding thing, and then on this side, it's got this clamp that clamps down to the edges of the plywood, and then you've got a straight cutting guide. I sure miss the Woodworking for Mere Mortals logo that used to be on the wall. That thing was iconic. Any chance of it returning? There's a blank wall back there. Right over here was where I had that spray painted. That was just as a quick joke. I put that on there, and it just stayed there. I don't know, I could spray paint it on somewhere, I guess. Here's somebody that bought a set of tools, jigsaw, circular saw, etc., that is battery operated, and years later now the batteries are dead and they won't hold a charge. Do you recommend buying new batteries? Yeah, if you can get new batteries, just get new batteries. Batteries don't last forever. But you might want to look into a new set of tools, especially the ones that you're going to use often, because the batteries today are way better than they used to be, and the tools are more powerful and they're just better. Are there any projects that I've always wanted to do but just haven't been able to do it? No, I think if there's something I wanted to do, I would just do it. I'm just wondering why you dip your paint roller straight into the paint can instead of using a tray. I actually brought the little tray out to use, but then that little mini roller I had, it just fits in the paint can, so I thought, why bother with that? I'm running low on toilet paper. What's the lowest grit of sandpaper you'd wipe with? I'd say 220. If you don't have a table saw, is it possible to edge joint a board with a circular saw? I don't know, that'd be tricky. Okay, Jimmy, you knew I was gonna answer this one. So many questions, so I'll go with the one most likely to be answered. The Powered Up course seemed to be aimed at as a further challenge to the Weekend Woodworker course, a bit more skill involved. How would you describe the skill level the Weekend Workshop is aimed at? I swear I didn't write that myself. I would say that the Weekend Workshop is kind of in between the two. I would, if you're brand new to woodworking, start with the Weekend Woodworker course, because that'll get you up to speed on the basics. But the Weekend Workshop course uses those same set of tools, so you don't have to go out and buy any fancy new tools. You won't need a router or anything like that to build all of the projects in the shop. And plus, it's a great way to kind of, it's a good follow-up to the Weekend Woodworker course, because at that point you're going to want to start to really think about how you're organizing your shop. And yeah, then the Powered Up course has 5 more advanced level projects that you can gain higher level skills from. And another question, will there be a 4th course coming? Out of sheer boredom, I went for the OG course, and once I'm through with those projects, I'm going to do the Powered Up and the Weekend Workshop. But then what, Steve? What am I supposed to do with myself then? That's a good question, because I've given that a lot of thought. And it's going to be a while before I come up with a 4th course, because it needs to solve a problem. So if I can come up with an idea that people really need help with, then I'll come up with the course. But what I don't want to do is just dump a whole bunch of plans together and videos and call that a course. A course needs to have a beginning and an end, or at least some sort of progression that you can follow. Could you show how to build a bed with storage underneath? Yeah, I've got one of those on my channel. Just search for bed on my channel. You'll see like 5 different beds I think I've made. How do the painted plywood edges look when they're finished? He's talking about the shelves on this cabinet. I mean, it's not perfect, but that's what the edges look like that are painted. Since this is a closet project, nobody's really gonna see it. I'm not really that concerned about those edges. But if you did want better looking edges painted for plywood, you would cover that up with some edge banding. You can get iron-on edge banding that would work out fine, or you could cut wood edge banding, kind of like I'm gonna make for the face frames of this project. Or another solution that I've done before, but this would kind of be a pain if you had a lot of these, would be to just fill all of that with wood putty, or even spackle would probably work out easier. Just scrape it along there and that'll smooth all of that out. Let that dry and then paint over it. Yeah, somebody else asking about Wyatt and how he's doing these days. He's doing great. I'll have to bring him out here one of these days. I know it's hard to believe Wyatt is 23 years old now. He was in my very first video on this channel, the chessboard, at the very end of that. And he actually shot that video. It's all the shots were kind of looking up, because he was like 11 or 12 years old at the time. What woodworking projects do you usually make when you aren't making YouTube videos? I just don't. How close is San Francisco to where you are? It's about a 20-minute drive. We're just north in Marin County. How affordable is the area where you live? I think this is probably about the least affordable place in the country to live. That's why I have such a tiny house here. Here's kind of a deep question from Brandon, and let's see if I can paraphrase it. I guess what he's saying is that he's a perfectionist and not always in a healthy way. I think by definition, being a perfectionist is not healthy. But we all have perfectionist tendencies. And what he's saying is he's having a hard time pursuing a hobby like woodworking when he knows he can't, be perfect at it. And I think that's the biggest problem with perfectionists. Perfectionist people have a hard time getting started with anything because you kind of go through this mindset, well, if I can't finish it perfectly, then I'm not going to even start it. So it's really hard making those first steps. I don't have an answer to perfectionism other than knowing that you're the only one that those imperfections bother, and understand that everything will be imperfect. That's kind of the neat thing about woodworking. I have never ever made a single project that didn't have errors in it and problems and things that didn't fit together perfectly. No project ever is perfect. Restart or start doing exercise is one of the hardest things I have to do besides quit smoking. How did you do it and how hard was it for you? Yeah, first quit smoking. I started by running. That was really my first goal because it's something simple. Everybody knows how to run and it's free. If you start to find yourself enjoying running, you'll want to look into it a little deeper because there is actually a lot more to running than just running. And if you kind of aren't careful, you can damage your knees and hips and other parts of your body. I still have a hard time, going to the gym. Sometimes it's just making that first step into the gym that is the most difficult, but I always try to remind myself that whenever I work out, when I'm done with that workout, I always feel amazing. It feels so good. It's just making that first step that's difficult. Try to set up a schedule where you're doing regular exercise. And there's lots and lots of YouTube channels to help you out. My favorite by far is Athlean X. Look for Jeff Cavalier, and he's amazing at all kinds of exercises. And they're all doing these at-home exercises right now, which is perfect. Question, what do you think about the new Halloween reboot? It's okay. Have I considered building one of Matthias Wandel's wooden bandsaws? Nah. Here's somebody else who wants to post project videos on YouTube but can't afford high quality equipment. Again, don't worry about it. You can shoot everything on your phone if you want. Remember, it's going to be, people are interested in what you're making, not the equipment you use. For instance, I have never had good audio equipment. I just use the on-camera microphone. Sometimes people complain about it, but it's never stopped anybody from watching my videos. How do you stay so clean when cutting and sanding all that wood? I don't. I brush it off a lot. I actually vacuum myself off when sawdust gets on me. But another tip that I have is to try to keep your shop clean as you're going. After you've made kind of a mess, try to sweep it up then, because if you let that stuff build up, and if you let tools start to accumulate on workbenches, it gets out of hand really quickly, and then it becomes just depressing to walk into your shop. There's nothing better than walking into a clean shop. I sometimes get requests for our project from friends or family. Have you had any particularly enjoyable or unpleasant requests from friends and family? As soon as people find out you're a woodworker, you'll start getting requests from people, and it's sort of annoying sometimes. And what happens is, I remember we had a neighbor come by one time, and literally she asked me if I could build her kitchen cabinets for like a couple $100. Like, that'd be a great project for you. No thank you. Did you like El Camino? I didn't that much. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It was okay, but I don't own a drill press, and I'm struggling to use Forstner bits without them skipping. Any advice? Yes, first of all, make sure that your workpiece is clamped down, because the Forstner bits have a lot of torque to them. Secondly, the bigger the bit you're going to be using, the slower you want to take it. So if you're just like using that high speed on your drill, that Forstner bit is just going to go crazy. So start and go very slow with those, like you're just slowly sawing through the wood. And as it starts to make that hole, you can, you know, speed it up a little bit at a time. And also when you're using Forstner bits, you have to let some of those wood chips out. So sometimes if you just keep pushing, it's just gonna get all clogged up in there. And so you need to kind of keep coming out with it and letting those chips out. How long do I wait after spraying the final coat of lacquer to buff out a project using craft paper? Not long, usually about an hour is fine. I love using lacquer because everything is so fast with it. What was the first thing I ever built on my own from start to finish? I don't remember. Some of the earliest things I do remember making are lamps and candlesticks, because on that Shopsmith there was a lathe tool, and so I used that a lot when I was a kid. I remember building a birdhouse. I guess every kid has to do that. With my grandpa when I was real small. I remember very well going out to his workshop and working with him on that. Of the woodworkers that chipped in for your table saw, how many are still active? That's a good question. It's funny because I don't hear from very many of these. Mark Spagnolo is on here. Oh, and Tim Charles is on here. A lot of these people aren't YouTubers. They were just people helping out. Like Jack Reed. Jack Reed lives here in California, and I met him once, and I just heard from him just a couple days ago, so that was really nice. Adam said he turned the extra fancy office paper tray into an extra fancy cat bed. My cat, one of them, Cobra, was sleeping in my extra fancy paper tray just yesterday. Have you thought about making anything for Cobra and Bubbles? Yeah, I'd like to. That'd be fun. Make another. I made a cat tree for our old cat, Princess Meow Meow, and I'd like to make something for these two cats. Here's somebody asking for more movie recommendations. I'm never sure how much I should mention movies on my show, or people kind of get tired of that. But he said that he saw VFW. That is so cool, because I haven't heard from a lot of people who have seen VFW, but he really liked it. And he wants to build shelves for a 1,000 plus movie collection. Wow. I used to have a lot of VHS and then DVD films in the day. I had cabinets or shelves made for all of those, but I got rid of all of that as part of my minimalist lifestyle, that I don't really need physical copies of movies or music or anything, when it's all, anything I want is pretty much available in streaming. Alice wants to know if I'm vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore. Well, I'm vegan curious. Not so much vegan as just plant-based curious. And for a while I was trying to adhere to a mostly plant-based diet, but I'm not religious about it, and I prefer to eat more vegetables in my diet than meat. But yeah, I still love a good In-N-Out burger. As long as you're paying real close attention to what you're eating, you can get plenty of protein and all your macronutrients with a plant-based diet. But it's something I struggle with, and not because I think that one type of diet is any more healthier than another type, but it's hard for me as I grow older to reconcile eating other creatures. I still do, but it's just harder for me to do that. It's hard for me to see animals in cages and in zoos even. She wants to know if my wife watches all my videos. I think she watches a lot. I know during the lockdown series she's been watching them. And how am I doing on my pull-ups? Not so great. I'm stuck at, like, I can do 3. Somebody was asking me if I'm gonna do my best movies of 2019 video over on my other channel. For the past couple of years I've done like my favorite films of the year, best top 10 films, and I didn't do one this January. Well, that's kind of too late now. But since you asked, Aaron P., I can tell you what my favorite films were from last year, because I keep lists. I keep lists of everything. I'm gonna go fast here. The Nightingale, One Cut of the Dead, Uncut Gems, The Headhunter, Knives Out, Marriage Story, Brittany Runs a Marathon, Hail Satan, The Lighthouse, Jojo Rabbit, Zombieland, Double Tap, Peanut Butter Falcon, The Hole in the Ground, Joker, Hagazusa, Midsommar, Stan and Ollie, Arctic, and Fighting with My Family. Zachary says he's seen people with very elaborate workbenches. He wants to build his own soon and was wondering what features are useful versus gimmickry. It depends upon what type of woodworking you're going to do. If you are interested especially in hand tool woodworking, then you're going to need really stable, solid workbench that ideally will have a bench vise on it, you know, leg vise, different types of ways to hold down the wood. Maybe some bench dog holes in the top that you can clamp your work down with. My style of woodworking doesn't require any of that. If I need to clamp things down, I just use a clamp on my bench. My workbenches are, I guess a lot of woodworkers would just call them assembly tables, but I consider them workbenches because they're sturdy and they can take a beating, and I assemble everything on them. Have you noticed any difference in yourself since you started making daily project videos as opposed to the weekly ones you were making? Well, I don't think I'm making daily project videos now. I'm just doing kind of a daily vlog, and it's a whole different way of looking at making videos. It's a lot more relaxed. I'm not scripting anything. I'm not under any time constraints. My goal is to have a central project that I'm working on, but at the same time I'm able to do kind of ancillary things and other things that are all kind of revolving around that project and other things that I might be working on. In other words, just kind of taking you into my shop on a daily basis. And you know, so far it's working out pretty okay. The individual views of videos are definitely down, but that's to be expected. People always kind of get tired of long series daily videos, but then it reaches, and I think I've reached this, I've flattened the curve of these daily vlog videos where now they're reaching about the same number of views on each video, and that's good really, because that means I've found that core audience that's interested in that, you know, daily content. I think they're fun to make, but I don't know how healthy it is for the channel overall because I'm not producing any evergreen content. That's what YouTube likes to call videos that people can search for or come back to, and you know, constant traffic to them. Do I think a cheaper bandsaw is worth buying, or would I be better off going ahead and buying a better one and be done with it? I got the Harbor Freight bandsaw. It's what's it called? Central Machinery. And I'm not a fan of it, so probably a little bit better. My previous bandsaw was a rigid bandsaw, and it worked really well. But I don't know, I don't use the bandsaw that much anymore. It doesn't really fit in well with the things that I'm trying to teach on the channel. YouTube channel or website, which is more important between quality of woodwork or personality of the woodworker? Which comes first and why? Most important thing to remember is that YouTube is an entertainment medium, so it really has to be entertaining. So I would think, yeah, personality is important, but if you can make projects that are just mind-blowingly awesome, then it really doesn't matter. Over the many years of creating, filming, editing, and posting projects, you've probably reached the why the heck am I even doing this level of frustration a time or two. What keeps you going when the frustration sets in, and what recharges you? Well, first of all, I like to remind myself that this is my job, and I also like to remind myself that there's people in the world who have to do really hard jobs and don't whine about the level of frustration they feel. I can't imagine like a 1915 coal miner every day going, you know, I'm not feeling fulfilled by my job, you know, because the guy's trying to earn money to feed his family. So any bit of frustration I feel from my job pales into comparison to people who are doing really hard work. I'm lucky enough to have a job that I love, and for me it's great because it combines two things that I love: woodworking and video making. And so whenever I'm doing woodworking, I'm having fun doing that, and then I just go up and do the video making. That's why it's fun for me to edit while I'm shooting the video at the same time. Have you given any thought to this year's Halloween video? It's only 6 months away. I know, right? It's just around the corner. I don't know. I'll come up with something that generates hardly any views. Where do you find the fountain of youth? Seriously, some of your early videos, you look older than you do now. Yeah, I get that a lot. Well, it's easy. Quit drinking, eat better, exercise a lot, and have somebody color your hair. Oh, and shave the beard. Beards make everybody look older. Oh, there's somebody else who saw VFW. Reminded him of Dusk to Dawn, right? I know. Do I still watch The Little Rascals from time to time? I haven't seen them in a while. He's talking about a documentary that I was on the E! Entertainment, True Hollywood Stories a while back. John wants to know what projects are in the new course. That's the weekend workshop course I'm sure you're probably talking about. He wants to know because it'll help him decide if he wants to buy it or not. Well, I actually had a video of my shop tour recently. Look for that video, and I show all of those projects as well as some other things. And also on Wednesday, when we reopen that course, you'll see a list on that and pictures of all of those projects on the website over at theweekendworkshop.com. What's the meaning behind, oh, this is an interesting question. What's the meaning behind my company ZRAM? Well, ZRAM Media is a company I started in 1997, and that was my design company that I started. And I was lucky enough at the time to secure a 4-letter domain, zram.com. Well, all that is just my name, Ramsey, kind of phonetically backwards, ZRAM. And at the time, Z was like the coolest letter of the alphabet. But since that was set up as a media company and then I did graphic design work, doing my YouTube videos just fits perfectly into that. So I didn't have to establish any sort of new company or anything for taxes. So it's a LLC corporation that all of my YouTube videos are made under ZRAM Media. If I didn't make woodworking videos, what type of video would I make? I would probably make video essays about film. I would like to have a movie related channel where I could discuss some of my favorite movies in depth. Since you always film with an open garage door, I was wondering if you ever get interrupted by passing cars or pedestrians. Yeah, it happens a lot. And birds. Birds are really noisy too, and usually I just kind of let it go. What kind of projects did I work on when I was a graphic designer? Another interesting question. I started out working in trade show exhibits. So I did everything from making, flyers, brochures, mostly for like Silicon Valley companies and tech companies, mostly printed materials. I did some online work and some logo design, that sort of thing. Do I have any formal training or experience in camera work or presentation? You're pretty good at filming and editing along with the woodworking. Well, most of that is just from doing it so much. But actually my camera angles and everything, I do not plan those out. I just like grab the camera, set it up quickly. As long as I get what I'm trying to do in the shot, I'm good to go. And if you look at my videos, they're underexposed, overexposed, they're kind of all over the place. Color balance is off a lot, but again, I don't worry about that a whole lot. But believe it or not, I do have a background in photography. I got a degree in commercial photography back in the day, and that's what led me to become a graphic designer, was being a photographer first and actually working in dark rooms and hand processing black and white film. This is how you hand process black and white film. And then printing, and it was a lot of fun. But all that led to the graphic design, which eventually led to making video. A couple of people asking me about my old Ford. Do I still have that? That was my dad's truck from 1976. No, it finally stopped working and I just couldn't get anybody to fix it because it was so old. You can't get anybody to fix a carburetor or anything. So I ended up donating it to Cars for Kids. What brand and model is my table saw? It's a Porter Cable table saw. I don't know the brand, or the model number. I don't think that I don't even know if Porter Cable still makes table saws or not. How do I determine whether to paint or assemble first? Usually I assemble a project first before I finish it, but if I know it's going to be particularly difficult to get into tight spaces, then I'll try to remember to finish and paint those ahead of time. But kind of like I mentioned the other day on one of my videos, I don't like working that way. I would much prefer to keep momentum going while I'm building a project and then finish it at the end. But it does have problems sometimes doing it that way. From a woodworking newbie, which tool should I not buy until I have money to waste? The tool you shouldn't buy is the one that you don't need. Only buy a tool if you have a need for it. Was I born and raised in California? No, I was born in Chicago and I was raised in Colorado. How tall am I? I'm 6'1". Artisan Pirate, hey, good to hear from you. Wants to know if I got rid of my antique lathe and scroll saw. Yeah, I know, because you like to do a lot of scroll saw work. Those are in my storage unit now, because when I started doing the weekend workshop course, I really wanted to redo this entire shop as a kind of a demo of how anybody could set up a shop. And those two tools just aren't tools that I use that often, but I don't want to get rid of them because I might use those in the future. So they're in my storage unit. Carolyn wants to know who taught me my woodworking skills. When I was a kid, it was my dad and my grandfather. Can you make most furniture projects with a pocket hole jig and a table saw? Probably. I don't know if I'd want to, but you could. Did you and your wife collaborate on the design of your closet project? Oh yeah, absolutely. Pretty much any furniture project, we'll discuss what we want, and then I'll design it and she'll look at it and see if there's any changes to be made. As a new woodworker during quarantine, how do you recommend I protect my lungs since I can't find a mask anywhere? That's a good question. I would still use your regular dust extraction, shop vac if you have them, and make sure there's plenty of ventilation in your workspace, and then at the very least use some sort of a bandana or something, mostly to keep the nuisance dust out. Also keep in mind that the biggest problem with working in a shop are the microparticles from sawdust, and that's mostly due to long-term exposure. So your risk of respiratory problems is lower as a hobbyist because you're not spending all day on your job site, as it were. You're not 8 hours a day working around sawdust. So just keep those things in mind, and as soon as you're able to get a proper dust mask, definitely get one. Have I seen Tiger King? I'm watching it right now. We have 2 episodes left. Frankly, I didn't really want to see it because there was just so much hype about it, but it's interesting. It seems like it's kind of long. It's like, I don't know how many episodes, like 8, 10 episodes or something, but it seems like they could have tightened it up a little bit. Frankly, I kind of get a little bored with it. I can never spend more than a few hours a day in my shop. My mind starts to wander and I start to make mistakes if I'm there any longer, and I feel like my projects take forever because of it. Is that just me? No, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. We all have our own, kind of time that we like to spend in the shop, and if you're not feeling it after a couple of hours, leave. And if you're a hobbyist, you probably don't have a due date on those projects anyway, so why not just take your time, build a little bit at a time. No big deal. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave it off here. That was a lot of questions. I hope I got to your question, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. This is probably gonna be the longest video, the longest non-live stream video I've ever posted on this channel. I really wanna thank you guys for watching, and I wanna thank you for supporting me during these past 28 days of producing daily videos. It's been a lot of fun and a little bit of a struggle at times, but really my whole goal with all of this is just to provide you with a little bit of distraction from the outside world for at least a few minutes every day. I'll get back to my closet organizer tomorrow. I'll see you then.